Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us on our Eldership Series. I have been so delighted with how it's been going so far. We were just talking amongst ourselves about the quality of the information that's been shared. So today I'd love to welcome up to the podium Jane Hall. Welcome, Jane Hall.
Thanks, Kate.
And before we get started, as we always do, I'd love to just spend half a moment thinking about where we actually are and why we're actually doing what we do. And the way that I like to do that is by bringing forward an acknowledgement of country. So let's just close our eyes for a minute and feel yourself in the center of all the country that's around you. See if you can cast your mind's eye out to the horizons with a combination of memory and imagination, thinking into the shape of the land, the waterways, and the sky above. And feeling that rich integration of country with you, your airways, your waterways, and your bones, the earth of you, the flesh. And as we sit here in our human bodies connected to the countries on which we find ourselves today, I'd like to pay deep respect to all the elders and the communities that have travelled on this land, Yuin country where I am, and all the countries that you're on, and have held this beautiful land in high regard and been provided true custodianship. And my hope is also that in thinking into what eldership actually is, that we can start to recontact that part of a healthy society and work on developing our respect and connection to the elders in our own community. And with that, I'd love to invite you to open your eyes. And thank you so much, Jane, for being here. It's been a bit of a dream come true to have you representing therapeutic touch, because therapeutic touch, in my way of thinking, is a discipline that really has been around, what, 50 years now? Am I right?
50 years. Yeah,
50th anniversary. Yeah. And has formed a bridge between the allied therapies and the so-called alternative, complementary, natural, whatever you want to call those. Yeah. So I would love to just take a deep dive and listen to how you came into therapeutic touch and what you were doing before you discovered therapeutic touch, and when did you discover therapeutic touch? Tell us a little bit.
Sure. I discovered therapeutic touch when I was doing my post-registration degree in nursing. I was at what's now RMIT University, and we were exploring natural therapies and nursing, and in particular midwifery, which was my true love. And in a subject mistakenly called medical surgical nursing, we explored all kinds of things. So it was a time in nursing when there were very exciting writings about healing and caring. There are a lot of nurses who were interested in complementary therapies and bringing them into mainstream. And we came across what was Dolores Krieger's first book, which she'd written in the late 1970s. TT was developed in 1972. And we tried out the energy exercises. You know, there's a whole lot of exercise in the book. We're trying to feel the energy. What's this? And I remember we had lots of fun with it, but we found it quite hard. I just reflect on that now, because 50 years later, I think the consciousness around energy and energy work has changed, so that when I teach it now, people take to it much more quickly. They're much more sensitive to it, and they don't have the same sort of concentration that we had to use. Yeah.
What year was that when you were doing your postgraduate study?
It was 1983.
1983.
1983. Yeah.
RMIT's always been ahead of the curve, haven't
Yes.
they?
Yeah,
On
absolutely.
interesting
Yes.
phenomena.
Yes.
I don't know how many of you are familiar with Mark Cohen.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Very well. Yeah.
It's pretty hard to miss Mark. Anyway, Mark has been really championing through RMIT the whole well-being concept and the concept of wellness and incorporation of all the modalities that we're involved in too. So I've always been very proud to have RMIT as an institution in this country, because it was really, like, it was not where everybody else's head was in 1983, as you say, Jane.
No. And I really myself hadn't had a lot to do with natural therapies at a personal level, but that was the beginning for me. Yeah. Yeah.
So that exercise, which you find in Tai Chi, where you're trying to feel the ball of energy, or Japanese yoga, we did that. I remember also doing it in 1983 as a matter of coincidence, and just going, what is this?
Yes.
But it's undeniable, isn't it, that there's an energy field? And so did you come to that same conclusion during those exercises?
Yes, we did. We certainly did. And that sort of, the process then was slow for me, but it kept on beckoning. I'd come across it, and I found another workshop in 1989 and did that. And then in the early 1990s, Dolores Krieger, who's the co-founder of TT, came out to Australia, to Adelaide, and taught 5 days of TT. And I was there with Geraldine.
He's here.
Yeah, and that was an extraordinary experience, because Dolores was a professor of nursing at New York University, and she and Dora Kunz, who was a natural healer, she came from a family of natural healers, and was president of the Theosophical Society in America. They had been researching people who had found they had a natural ability to heal, and they were exploring, and doing some really good research on that. But they decided that, in fact, it wasn't just special people who could promote healing. They thought, in fact, it was a natural human ability. And they sat down and asked themselves, how can we teach it? And in particular, how can we teach it to nurses? Because Dolores introduced it to the master's and doctoral programs at New York University in nursing.
Wow.
And they had to construct it in a way that it could be taught and presented in mainstream.
Yeah, because, here I am aware that there's a lot of therapists, nurses included, that have been taken up Reiki because they've recognized that there's an energy that can be used, and how important the whole concept of being close and touching and healing is. But, Reiki per se hasn't gone into the mainstream culture and been absorbed. So I'm really interested to hear how she managed to get it there. Yes,
well, that's really how they did it. And they taught, because they were master's and doctoral programs at New York Uni and New York University Hospital. They kind of were the mover and shakers, in nursing and midwifery in those days. So that's how it got into the mainstream in the hospitals in America and Canada. And now it's all over the world. I mean, there's actually some good research being done in Iran, therapeutic touch, and Turkey, Germany, and France, and Italy, and Brazil. So it's been it's really been an interesting process.
Totally. It's like being given permission, isn't it? And that's always what it struck me as being in Reiki. I don't know how many of you have done your Reiki certificates, but in my day, they rang the bell on top of your head and opened your portals and basically gave you permission to go forth. And in my group, anyway, there was plumbers, there was vets, there was people that had never done any healing professional studies whatsoever. But the recognition was clearly that we're, as humans, designed to heal.
Yes. Yes. And and that's really what those two extraordinary women decided and taught.
Because Dora could see the energy.
Yes.
Yes, so she could. Sorry, I interrupted you. Beg your pardon.
Yeah, she had natural abilities that way.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
she was what some people might call clairvoyant. Yeah.
yeah.
But how did
go
how did they get that? Did they have pushback, or did they just say, okay, this is being included in the curriculum and off we go?
Well, one of the things they did, and TT grew out of research, and they began researching it from the beginning. So the first research study was done on TT was done in 1976 by Dolores, and it showed that therapeutic touch could raise the hemoglobin levels. So since then, there are literally thousands of studies in it. And if anyone's interested, you can go on the Therapeutic Touch International website, and there's a listing. It's, I don't know how many pages worth of all the research.
It's fabulous, isn't it? And a similar thing exists in the yoga field. There's thousands and thousands of articles written all over the world about therapeutic benefits of yoga. And yet, when it came to deciding which professions should receive private health fund contributions, private health fund, what do you call it? Remuneration? No, something. I think a few years ago, a number, I think it was 16 different therapies were removed from the registry of that with the claim that there was no evidence. Rebates, thanks.
That's right, yes.
Private health fund rebates. They removed 16 different professions saying that there was no evidence that they were of any benefit whatsoever therapeutically, which was clearly nonsense.
Yes, and that's something, I mean, even with all that research that we come up against in therapeutic touch. And the evidence, I mean, the other thing with researching an energy therapy is it's a learning curve. You know, it's not like researching giving aspirin or something like that. Energy work is very specific to the person, etc. So it's been a learning curve in terms of developing therapies that, research processes that suit the therapy or the work. But there's just been a really good study, I can let people have it, looking at the use of TT in aged care, and that's had good results. There's a lot of the use of therapeutic touch in aged care and palliative care.
I think, you know, what a lot of good there. How many of you are there across the world? Has a study been done to work that out?
No, there hasn't. I don't know, but I would say many thousands, I would imagine. Yeah.
Okay. And has it remained within the nursing profession, or has it moved to other groupings?
Other groups.
It's across a number of groups now. Nursing's strong in it, but it's sort of spread out. And now I think there's kind of three main focus. One is the mainstream healthcare, where it can be used and practiced. There's work in natural therapies, and I've used TT in both of those. And then there's, like Reiki, there's the family sort of using it with your family and friends and on yourself. One of the things about therapeutic touch that I love and that is core for me is, as much as the more I do it, the more it grows me. So it's a process of a kind of dance between doing the healing work and grow, and then I grow, and my growth facilitates my healing work, and it flows like that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. The education that we do, the training has got a lot of emphasis on self-awareness, self-growth, reflection, journaling, all that kind of thing, meditation.
You're reminding me very much of what Simon was talking about yesterday, Pauline, as we asked him the question regarding, you know, when did it come to your life? What part of your life is it, etc. And he said, it is my life. I can't really distinguish between it and myself, because it's been a guiding principle that he had been involved with for about as long as you have been involved in touch. So the other thing is that when you're doing the therapeutic touch just on a purely physical, energetic health level rather than intellectual level, it also grows you, doesn't it? I mean, it's very hard to provide even a massage without feeling some of that or a good massage, feeling that comes through and do what it needs to do on the way.
Yes, it's a great privilege to do the work. privilege. Yeah. And
Which-
it's sorry, can you say?
Which brings me to the next subject of gratitude. You know, the feeling of privilege and having been given the gift can't but open up that feeling of gratitude towards the elders that have brought it to us. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes. Amazing collection of elders, starting with Dee and Dora, as we call them, but also many, many wonderful elders around the world, particularly, I think, as well as here. And I'd like to acknowledge Geraldine as a fellow elder. Sue Gregory is another one. But in Canada and the United States, there's some amazing elders over there.
Do you continue to feel the river of the lineage coming through you? Like, do you still go to elders in the community to learn more at this point in your career? Yes, we do. And Zoom's been a great advantage in that, of course. We're able to have a lot more connection, don't have to pay money to go to the US. I think there's been and of course the significant thing for us here was when Dolores came out in 1993 and again in 1999, and the strong connection. She also had a strong connection to Indigenous peoples, and went to Uluru and had profound experience there. The other elder connection I will actually share is Dora. Dora was actually, I think, certainly brought up in Java. And in the just after the First World War, she came to Australia to work with Charles Leadbeater, who was a very famous Australian clairvoyant and theosophist. And she was only quite young. She came with her mentor, and she came and helped him do healing work with the families who'd lost their sons and brothers and husbands in the First World War. Wow.
And she met her husband here and then travelled to America and lived there. So, and some of her family live here. So there's a real elder connection.
That's incredible. So she was using what she was learning with Charles Leadbeater.
Yes.
I think I've heard his name in Steiner circles, actually. Definitely. I think he's quite famous.
Yes, he wrote a lot of books, I think.
Yeah. Was he Australian?
I'm not sure if he was Australian originally, but he had a lot to do with the Theosophical Society in Sydney.
Okay.
Back in the day, yeah. So there's quite a strong tradition, and I suppose we're also very aware that, as are all the healers on this program, I know, that we owe a huge debt to the 60,000 years of healing that's happened on this land, and pay great respect to the healers of our Indigenous people. And in my case, particularly the Wurundjeri people whose land I'm on.
Yeah, and that debt, may we repay it manifold times.
Yes.
Really. It's very interesting, isn't it? Those amongst us who of this society that have gone into the healing professions and seen how important it is to heal, have often had to go overseas and glean knowledge from America, from India, from wherever it might have been. And at the moment, we're trying to open up that relationship and those conversations that will enable upcoming healers to go, well, I obviously have a talent, desire, requirement for healing and the need to know more. I'll just walk down the street and have a chat to the elders.
And in fact, as you speak, I would acknowledge that for Jerry and myself and Sue, we've all had great gifts from First Nations healers, and teachings. And Sue's done a lot of work with Aboriginal and Ngukurr. They talk together. Frank Ansell, So
I used to work with them for 2 years in the outback as a nurse, and often consulted with the medicine man, and compared notes. So very privileged to be with them.
And Geraldine, whereabouts was that in the nation?
I went to Borroloola first, and then I went to Wave Hill. Worked with Vincent Ingiari, which you may have heard of. So for 2 years I was there with him. He was an amazing man. And it was the cattle station. So and we used to go around the other cattle stations and screen people as well.
Wow.
So you could say, get off your horse and let me check you, those things. Things that, so it was a very rich experience I had. I used to work in Africa as well, so I had sort of different contrasts. So, but working with on land, you could feel their connection. So, and some of the ceremonies that they had, we were part of.
Lucky you. Oh, is Vincent the Vincent that's been immortalized in song?
Yes, Vincent Ingiari, and the big state in the territory is Ingiari now. It's called Ingiari. I've got a picture of me with him here if you want to.
Well, I'd love you to share that if you feel the urge.
Just going to see, I'll hobble over with my sore knee.
Oh, please do. More therapeutic touch required.
Yes.
I think big things from little things grow. Is that?
That's it. Yeah, that's it. I'll see if you can.
Paul Kelly.
Can you see that?
Oh, if you lift it
up higher,
up a bit.
That's it. Oh, bless. Well,
that's actually on Body Creek. That's actually, what he was given. Gough Whitlam poured the sand into his hand. Remember and they were able to have Waddy Creek. So there's a small clinic behind there. We had a bigger one in Wave Hill, and Waddy Creek had a small one. So that's part of something we put together, didn't we? We did an Indigenous presentation connecting to land. That was a few weeks ago, so that's been recorded.
It's part of our 50th celebration.
Our 50th celebration, yeah.
We'd love to, if you have the desire to share that around, it would be great to listen to that, because really what we are doing, we are doing it, is centralizing the role of country in the healing of each individual and also of this society. So that's the big theme that we're using over here at the moment to really bring us together. And as you said, you've been in India. It doesn't matter what continent, doesn't matter what color. we're all operating on the same 2 legs, a head, a body. We all function pretty much the same, and we've all got the same role on the planet, which is, if we're healthy and strong enough to be true custodians. So interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's amazing. And I think that would speak for the whole community over here. We'd love to, if you were willing to share that recording, we'd love to hear it. So there you are. You've been, what other kind of therapies? You said you had employed therapeutic touch within other natural therapies, Jane?
I use therapeutic touch with Australian bushfly essences. As the main other one. I've also explored other energy therapies because I've been curious, and I learned from each one I explore, including pranic healing, Reiki, esoteric healing, healing touch. But I suppose I find therapeutic touch as my core and my base. And there's a therapeutic touch practitioner. She says, it is profoundly simple and simply profound.
Yeah.
That really for me describes it. The other thing I found, the more I did energy work, the more I did therapeutic touch, the more people shared, the more things rose naturally as the energy flowed. And I thought to myself, this is when I was in private practice. I'd left mainstream nursing midwifery. I thought, I think I'm doing counselling here. I better go and get a master's. So I have a master's in counselling, and I use that with therapeutic touch very effectively. And just recently, recently in terms of my whole career, I've been studying and using internal family systems theory. therapy. So that's a psycho-spiritual therapy which has space for energy work.
Mm.
They fit together very, very nicely. It's beautiful work.
I'm not familiar with that in internal family systems. Is that like family constellation? Is it the same kind?
No, it's different.
How does it work?
Yes. It's basically comes out of the concept, which is not new, it's been around for a long time, that rather than just being one big blob as a human, we actually consisted of a core self, if you like, which we're born with, the true self. And then as life happens, we develop parts of ourselves to help us deal with life. So really, it's a theory which recognises we have parts, different parts. And a lot of those parts just help us get on with life. There's, for example, I've got a teacher part, which is quite up at the moment because I'm used to presenting, so that part is very present. And so then we look at, in terms of therapy, there can be parts internally which are carry pain or suffering, and parts which protect them. And the work is to heal, is to release the burden on the parts that carry the pain and help the protectors be effective but not too strong. In a nutshell, I mean, there's quite a bit more to it, but it's lovely work, and it goes very well because it recognises energy, and the kinds of things that happen when you do energy work fit nicely into IFS. So I suppose what I'm saying is it's the same sort of story. The healing work calls us, and my particular frame is therapeutic touch. There are many others, as we know from this series.
Wow. So years and years and years of doing what you do. Have you got any plans to stop doing one-to-one healing?
No.
Good. I'm delighted to hear that because, I think that those of us who are self-employed are very, very lucky that we don't hit that 65-year hump or whatever year it is that the organisation has decided where you've suddenly turned old overnight. And but you will.
I know. No, I think it will. I'll know, when it's time to hang up my shingle in that way. But yeah, I just long to share it. I long to see it happening. We did get therapeutic touch into hospitals in Victoria for a while. And Jerry was also involved in that. We both taught it at universities. I've taught about three.
I taught at Monash. Yeah,
you taught at Monash, which is how you know Mark Cohen. But things shifted. About 2000, funding shifted, universities changed. So unfortunately, that shifted as well. So we're wanting to move it back in because really it's the most beautiful therapy for use in clinical care. It's so efficient. You can do a TT treatment in 5 minutes.
And it's just so beautiful for the person receiving,
Yes.
Touched in that way.
That's right, yeah. And we've had personal experience of that. And it's there's some beautiful work being done in Perth, an organisation, Healing Insights. They are doing a lot of community-based care in aged care, and they provide therapeutic touch and some other natural therapies like reflexology to elderly people in their homes.
They're funded.
They're funded for that.
Who fund them? Is it a government funding?
Yes.
Yes.
Don't ask me which particular form of yes, they've been able to get funding.
And what happened in 2000? How did they remove the funding for your part of the course?
I think that there was quite a lot of funding, particularly in aged care, for training in natural therapies. And if we had Sue Gregory here, she could tell you the exact detail. But that just disappeared. That was taken out. And I think the same in the courses. The nursing courses had been very open, you know, with this healing theory, caring theory, etc. And then they started to close in and become more clinical again. So sometimes it's just about the cycle, I suppose. But we did manage, I did conduct a project at the Alfred and at the Royal Women's, where we taught TT to the staff, and they went and used it, and it was very effective.
Fantastic. Wow, it's and you know that part of being an elder, having received the knowledge from all those elders you've just described coming through you, and then passing it on. Are you teaching currently?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We've developed a LA is part of the. Can I say LA? She did wave her hand, so I thought.
I'm happy to say something, Jane.
Okay. Student right here. So
yeah, Jane and Geraldine, I've got to know them over the last year and a half, I suppose, because from foundations on. I'm in the mentorship program right now. And I have to say, the whole process is one of personal transformation. As much as it is working with people, and it has a lot to do with the energetic work, which is the new medicine, which I think is connected to Heart Math Institute and the work of Oshman and all of that work, which is underlying sort of the new energy, that's the new energy medicine, which is obviously going to, it's already there in many forms, like with, different MRIs and CT scans and all. That's a form of energy medicine, even though people don't want to necessarily accept it as such. But we can do that through our own energetic being. I've just found it a really interesting personal journey. I've still got a long way to go. And the support and the guidance that I've received from Jane and Virginia and Geraldine and the whole group of people doing it is astonishing. I'm really surprised, because I sort of feel like it's the kind of support that's not a pressure like a course that you're studying. It's a respect for your own journey. So for me, which is as much an example of what it is about. So I find that really helpful, and I'm plodding along, experiencing it, trying to understand it, and I'm very grateful that I've found this work. I do bone therapy myself as well. I'm a bone therapist, and I've studied craniosacral as well as a couple of other modalities as well. But I'm really finding this a really nice adjunct to my other work, not even as much as I'm practicing it on my own clients, but the thinking behind it, the process of my centering and grounding myself, who I am when I come to the practice, how I'm approaching the person and interacting and asking permission to allow universal energy to work with me or through me with the person. That's the part that's interesting to me. So I'm very grateful. Jane, Geraldine, amazing instructors, incredible patience, especially when I haven't done all my assignments yet. So
yeah, thanks, Elaine.
It's lovely to hear from down the lineage.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yes.
And I think that, Ella, you've just described a beautiful aspect of eldership, that patience and that holding and understanding that energy and everything else has its own time frame and it's going to get there, and respect of, that's your time frame and it will unfold. It's an example of great elderhood.
That kind of balance, because our education program is based on Cert 4 level. And it could easily slot into a Cert 4. It was actually planned originally to do so. So it's got quite a lot of content in it and formal structures. So it's always that. It's the same with researching energy work as well. There's that sort of thing about energy as flow and movement, etc. And then there's the structures that human beings put in place, and balancing them up is an interesting process.
I know that Merv is interested in formalizing his teacher training for Laughter Yoga, and we heard from Helen, who's actually managed to get over the line her Cert 4 at the cost of, what was she saying, Merv? Was it 500,000, I think?
It's hugely expensive.
$500,000.
Yes.
What? Gosh.
Yeah. So what was the reason that you pulled back on your Cert 4 development?
Jane, do you want to talk about that?
Not in great detail, no thanks. Basically money.
Money. Yeah.
The cost wasn't cost effective. And the structure is of actually writing and getting a course accredited and then reaccredited and then reaccredited is huge. So, and also that was at the time, if you remember, there was a wonderful time when there was freely available funding for people doing vet sector courses, and that funding for students doing natural therapies as well as, you know, aged care worker and all the sort of more usual things. So there was, students could afford to come and do these courses. And all of a sudden, that got pulled. So the cost to us plus that, where the students couldn't get funded and therefore a whole lot more people couldn't do the course, all coincided. So we thought, no, we've got our cert level course. It's been through the initial accreditation process. We're happy with the quality, and we now have what's called industry accredited.
Yeah.
Accredited
From the association.
Therapeutic Touch Association of Australasia, and that's in line with the Therapeutic Touch International Association's guidelines as well.
Yeah, when it all goes pear-shaped, you have to move back into being your own boss, don't you, and making the decision.
Yes.
It's a hideous process applying for Cert 4. I've only done it once before. I didn't do it. I was assisting somebody at a yoga institution to do it, and I could not believe how exhausting and dull it was.
Precisely. Yes. And again, totally contrary to the experience of energy work.
Yeah.
You know, and those systems have a lot of difficulty with something like energy work anyway, in terms of understanding what we do.
Yeah, sure do. It was square peg, round hole kind of stuff. Really hard. Oh, so I'm just going to see if anybody has any questions, Jan, before you and I. Is anybody burning bright with questions?
You'd like to know?
Not yet. Well, we'll keep talking, but do stick your hand up if you would like to say something.
You might be interested in a study that was done with babies in intensive care whose parents had AIDS or drug issues. And there was a team of TT practitioners were going in to give them TT, and it had an amazing effect on them in terms of their recovery and well-being. But what they found was really interesting is the other nurses said as soon as the 3 nurses that came in to do the TT walked into the intensive care, the babies that had been crying suddenly stopped. They could feel them coming in. So, and they just said it was amazing. They just suddenly changed. So they've just felt it. So that's the power of energy, isn't it?
I guess that takes me to another question. We've been really exploring with all the elders that have been on this series so far, how they've gone with the leap into the ether, onto Zoom. You know, I know a number of Reiki practitioners who are practicing through Zoom. Does that work through Therapeutic Touch?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, there's always been a distance healing component with Therapeutic Touch anyway, but certainly with Zoom, Yes, you don't have to have Zoom to do it, of course. But yes, there has, and in particular, therapeutic touch education. So we found that you can teach energy work online, and you can do it internationally. So the first course we ran, one of our students was from Madeira.
Not far away.
He was interested in TT, so she did the course with us. So yes, and we've been able, and still do, we're running a course at the moment, teach right around Australia, which is a great gift, particularly to smaller communities. You know, where you don't have to pay for someone to come in and teach it, and have all the trouble and expense of that. And remote communities as well.
It's definitely a way of making it possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think it's just as good?
No, I don't. I don't think you can beat face-to-face experiential, for the experiential work, particularly for the practice.
That's why we have retreats, isn't it?
Yeah, yes. But it's, how can I put it, using Winnicott's terms, it's good enough. It's good enough, yeah.
Has it increased the number of people coming to your courses?
I think it's more increased the variety of people from where they come from. Numbers wise, not sure, maybe a little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. It's such a strange new world, isn't it? I know, Pauline, you were saying you too you were teaching people, far-flung people these days. Yeah. Oh, I think you're mute.
She is, yeah, Pauline.
Pauline's mute.
Yeah, there we go. I never thought I'd teach on Zoom because I'm very tactile. But I found COVID forced a hand, and you can do it extremely well. And Jane, no, it might have been Geraldine, when you're talking about the babies, privilege of holding a brand new baby from a drug addict and a child while it went through its withdrawal, and so I sat in the hospital day and night. And interestingly enough, I came across, she didn't call it therapeutic touch, but when I was living in Israel in 1972, 73, and the lady I was staying with, you'd come in from fruit picking or being yelled at because you cut the wrong branches or something, and she'd be there doing this on your body, and you'd go, you're a bit creepy crawly, and then all of a sudden you go, oh my God, can you do that again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about intention, isn't it?
Yeah. So Geraldine, you're talking about the babies.
Yeah.
It certainly is phenomenal, and exactly the same as you said. As soon as that baby left my arms for medical intervention, it screamed.
Oh, you see, they just felt your presence wasn't there. Yeah. They're so sensitive to.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's.
Thank you. Yeah. And how special to be able to teach health professionals to be in that, we call it centered and grounded state, which is the core of therapeutic touch. And there's other languages in other systems, but to teach health professionals how to be in that centered, grounded, profoundly compassionate and intentional space while they're doing their work, whatever it is. So that, you know, I know when we're at the women's in the oncology ward, using therapeutic touch on an arm before inserting an intravenous.
Yeah. You can get the.
It just flows. It's much it's more comfortable. It seems the needle seems to go in quicker. It's very useful, and it can just be done in a moment as well as a full treatment. The other part about it is you can also do it with someone sitting up. In fact, a lot of the therapeutic touch early on particularly, was conducted with people seated rather than lying. So it's very flexible.
It's you know, people need healing, that's for sure, no matter whether they're sitting lying or standing on their head.
That's right.
So, it's just wonderful that its protocol allows you to step in there and do whatever situation you find yourself in. I love that kind of framing, from tiny little babies to families who've lost somebody in the First World War, you know, like that's
absolutely, yeah.
that spectrum.
Yes. There's a beautiful process in therapeutic touch developed by Kathy Fanslow.
Hand-heart connection,
in palliative care. She said her patients taught her this. She calls it hand-heart, and it's a lovely way of connecting to the person's heart, and was originally developed to assist people who are dying and to help their relatives. But of course, has been found to be wonderful for anyone, particularly tenderness and care. Yes. And the other process that Sir Gregory and Lynn Woods and Sherry-Ann Hoffmeyer have, serenity settling. And that's a form of TT where what they discovered was people who are very distressed with dementia, and particularly the sundowning, you know, pacing that happens around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, can be very distressed. What they found was they could teach staff members in a day to use the elements of therapeutic touch to begin to be present to the residents and walk with them and tune in and use therapy touch over their adrenal region to very gently help them to slow down and calm down. And that's been found to be very effective.
It's as we were talking about Merv the other day, you know, the things, the birthright of wellness, and how easy it is to actually access that through a simple laugh, a simple breath, a simple touch, all the things that don't cost anything really once you know how. You don't have to keep running off to the $368 psychoanalyst, although that may be in certain contexts, but you can do that thing, bring people back and regrid them. I was thinking when you were talking, Geraldine, about those babies, about and the coming into the room, Pauline, and that breaking the grid, that it really does. Look, it happens, doesn't it? As you're a child, as you're a baby, you know, akachan, the Japanese word for baby is child of God, means direct contact to God or spirit or whatever you want to name that. And that's how babies are treated in that society, as a direct emissary of the divine, basically. But at what point do humans disassociate from that, are told that no, there are no fairies, you know? Just seeing things and your play friend, your pretend friend, and etc. etc. At what point do people start to disassociate from that incredible power that exists within all of us, that all of our disciplines and all healing actually has to tap into if they're going to have any effect whatsoever?
I know.
Open to connection.
And I think this kind of work helps that reconnection. Helps that reconnection too. I know it did for me. The more I did this work, I became aware of the qualities of spirit that live in nature. And I know Dee and Dora could see them. Very aware. And they always, if they could, taught outside. Trees in particular. So the more I do this work, the more I open to
environment,
which children are naturally aware of. As you say, but it disappears. And I just had to say this. one of the things, I didn't ever meet Dora, but the people who knew her, the thing they talk about most is her laughter.
Yeah.
So there is a lot, you know, I think the great elders, laughter is often a big feature, isn't it?
Mm.
Lama.
It certainly is. We've talked about that again, Merv. The cosmic joke of it all. You know, I think keeping your mind in that bigger frame of, you know, it may feel very serious and sturdy at the time, but everything moves, everything shifts, and humor, that capacity to understand the bigger picture is again a huge attribute of being an elder. Yeah. I love it. So what, as an elder, what do you think perhaps our most direct pathway is to helping to regrid and help people understand that we all have the capacity to heal, and that we don't need a whole lot of external input to heal?
I think the pathway is to assist people to experience that. You can talk about it till the cows come home, but until people experience their own capacity, it's still theoretical. So for people to begin by experiencing the energy, to begin by playing around with that, to experience what it's like when you use a little bit of therapeutic touch or pranic healing or Reiki or whatever it is with your child or your grandchild. To experience what it's like when you have it for yourself. I think that's the way in, and especially with energy work, and especially with energy work in our culture. It's very hard to describe. The language, English language, is very poor for describing the experience of energy. We could talk, you know, I don't know, Sanskrit or something, that might be different. So when people experience it, receive it themselves, and then use it themselves, I think that's my vision. It just becomes a natural process in life, you know.
A natural process in life. That's the trick, isn't it? I woke up this morning at 5 and I have an article that I've just submitted about going barefoot on Belonging Day, which is how we're reframing January the 26th.
Oh, okay.
Consequently, and that is pointing out the birthright of connection that we all have, and how disconnected we've become through putting those beautiful shoes on the end of our legs and building ourselves into rooms, you know, where the forces aren't quite so strong as they might be if we're out in the wind and the water and the elements. And so it's been a really interesting process looking into the science of going barefoot and all the things that are assisted by just simply taking your shoes off and standing on the earth, you know, chronic.
To the land, yeah, absolutely.
Exactly the same thing that as a therapeutic touch practitioner, you're facilitating for somebody else. But the earth, in this case, is the therapeutic touch.
Yes,
and so
absolutely.
it is chronic inflammation, it assists autoimmune disorder, it assists pain, it assists capacity to sleep and diurnal rhythms, etc., etc., etc. The list went on and on and on. And it's absolutely beautiful that now when I talk about that stuff, as opposed to 40 years ago when I started out being a therapist, and people, as my mother said this week, "You're a simple child of nature, darling." You know, quick way of demoting the whole connection to nature as a phenomena and a healing force, I feel. But back 40 years ago, if you started talking about taking your shoes off in order to heal, people just gave you that look.
Yeah.
I think perhaps we've all experienced that look, and I wonder whether you, as a therapeutic touch practitioner, or you, Geraldine, or I think we've now been joined by Cynthia and Ella, have ever had people go, there, dear?
Yes, and I have to apologise.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say I had planned to be here at 12:30. I was going to be home and logged in, but I just found out my daughter's got COVID and she's at her
Oh.
dad's, and so there's been all these phone calls, and I thought I'm going to at least get on for the last part and then watch the recording. So yeah, I'm sorry I didn't get to join you earlier. Sorry.
That's the COVID world. And just by the way, TT is very good for the symptoms of COVID.
Yes, I know.
Online, and that's the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it online, of course.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm trying to decide whether to pick her up or leave her there, and I don't know what to do. So
work it out.
Yeah.
In fact, one of our elders, Peter Nottle, has been doing. She was doing some TT to a friend in Norway who had quite severe COVID, and with very good effect.
It's interesting.
And another colleague, another person in India. So yep, it works well. Yes, I know we're coming to the end. I'd just like to say one of my most profound learnings occurred through doing my Masters in Education, where I came across the whole idea of archetypes and great patterns and etc., and ended up doing my Master's thesis on nurses as wounded healers.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So in the early 90s. And that, of course, has expanded out to the whole concept of the wounded healer as an archetype. And the power of that archetype, any of us in the healing professions constellate or bring into being that archetype very strongly. And the strongest message of that archetype is that we need to be aware of our own woundedness and take our own journeys to healing in order to heal effectively, support healing in others. And I think for me, one of the things about therapeutic touch is that's enabled and supported my journey to healing.
That's so important. Thank you for bringing that to the fore in the conversation, because it doesn't stop, does it? You know, it doesn't matter, no matter your oldness or your eldershipness. It's a perpetual journey, the healing journey. And, you know, as they say around these parts in culture, we're here to learn. And that's why we're given the gift of life to learn. So, and learning stroke healing is what we're doing.
Yes. And that journey just, you know, it's not one trip, it's right around again and again.
And it's a great privilege and honor to be given the capacity to explore healing on behalf of others, because it can only contribute to the way that we our own healing. And it's part and parcel of the same story. We learn so much from who comes in and lies in front of us, or whichever group we're teaching.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Jane, it's been just beautiful having a chat to you. I particularly love the way you name so many people, and that respect that you're showing to all those people. I hope, and I know you must receive that from your community also, because what goes around comes around. That's for sure. So thank you for really illustrating eldership in that way. It's really, really beautiful. Does anybody else wish to say anything or chime in at this point? Look, there you go. You've satisfied everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this particular episode. It's been a real joy to have you all here. We have only 2 more sessions before we come to the end of this Eldership series, but they'll all be, and that the next one is at 12:30 on Saturday, and the one after that is me, but I'm not doing it till 4 p.m. on Sunday in case I have to drive my parents down the south coast, so I'm giving myself time to land. And I'll be talking about eldership at 4 p.m. and would love your company if you also wanted to come on and talk about eldership and your experience and chime in as well. So thank you very, very much, and we'll catch up again tomorrow at 12:30. I'm having a mental blank about who's on tomorrow.
Peter Smith, I have on the list right next to me.
Thank you.
Go.
So Peter will extend this conversation around energetics, of course, because he's a quantum healer, energy healer, and he also has been in the trade for a long time and developed his own version thereof. So I'm really looking forward to having a good yarn with him as well. So thank you, Jane. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
For your community. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, LA. Thank you, Geraldine, for all your wise words. And on we
Can
go.
I just ask, is it the same link?
Yes, it is.
Oh, so I don't have to register again. Okay.
No, you don't have to.
Thank you.
And because you have registered, then all of the links will be sent to you for the YouTube videos at the end.
Okay.
Oh, great. Oh, because I've missed some.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Jane and Geraldine. You did a great job.
You too.
Thanks, everybody. It's a joy to
Thank you,
Thank
Kate.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Goodbye, all. See you.
Bye.